2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right. I think that the greatest challenge I had when I graduated in 1998 was like, why do you want to be a dentist? You know, it's like dentistry has this connotation with society of something that is evil, as something that's dark and that, you know, inspires pain. And I think Hollywood had a huge part to play in that by always depicting dentists as being the bad guy and the solitary figure that was always frustrated and stressed. I graduated in 1998. I've been dedicating the best part of 22 years trying to change that narrative and trying to get past that barrier that dentistry was about fixing teeth and create a different story, which is dentistry is about building smiles. And I know it's cheesy, but a smile is the shortest distance between two people. So if I got to do my job well, then, you know, you could actually heal something that wasn't just physical, but was also emotional. The only way that I saw fit to do this was literally surround myself by really smart people, getting a lot of education, ongoing education, and awesome technology. So I guess I'm very, very lucky and very privileged to be able to practice the way I do in the current environment, because not everybody gets a chance to do it the way I do it, and me and my team. And I'm also very grateful for the patients for trusting me to do this. The future is very, very exciting, and consumers and technology, artificial intelligence are really, truly going to profoundly change this profession, and I'm looking forward to it. I only understood it in hindsight, how I got here. It's not like I started with a roadmap, because there wasn't one. I mean, I started working before the internet really came to fruition. There's been a few key points in my life that really shifted the paradigms that I was living in. I was fortunate enough to witness a conference from one of the founding fathers of cosmetic dentistry, Dr. Ronald Goldstein from Team Atlanta. Back in 1996, he came to Portugal to my university, and it just blew me away to hear this guy, back then who must have been in his 60s, he's now in his 80s, and one of the father figures, and I just went past boundaries, and it really inspired me to even become a speaker, and then consequently, other doctors on his team, Dr. Salama and Dr. Garber, I became a groupie, and I followed their concepts of always inclusive, always sharing, and that interdisciplinary approach. And then I guess with the first TV show that I did back in 2006, that led me to understanding the social impact of a smile. We got hundreds of thousands of letters. And I guess the combination of those two things from a social perspective and from a clinical perspective put me on my path. I remember I went to Salesianos Studio here, just outskirts of Lisbon, and it was an all-boys Catholic school. And back then, you know, my parents basically weren't very hands-on parents. My father was working in Africa, and I remember going to school, and one day there were psychologists there, and they did these psychometric evaluation tests, and one of them said, look, you know, I would be good at, I think it was by A, B, C, different areas, and that I should think about becoming a lawyer, and I discussed that with my parents, and yeah, law seemed interesting, and apparently I had an inclination for that. But I was also really good at biology, and it came to the specific day when I had to go and register for the next year that I would literally have to define my future, which in retrospective is kind of crazy, because you know, that one decision could have changed everything. So I remember going there, and I didn't know if it was area A or area D, and I was in line, and I had the check to sign in, and the woman said, okay, what's it going to be? And I was like, I don't know. And so I flipped a coin, and I said, A, I'll become a lawyer, and B, I'll become a doctor. And then I went like that, and boom. So I wanted to be a heart surgeon, and I didn't make the grade because I had to get high levels in mathematics. So I got everything else was pretty good, but mathematics I sucked at, still do today. So great, you have everything now on there. Whoever would have thought that you never would have needed it. But yeah, I guess I was reluctant to becoming a dentist for the first 4 or 5 years of dental school. And because the dentistry I was studying is very far removed from the dentistry that I'm practicing today. If you look at Portugal today, I mean, it's one of the most welcoming countries in terms of language that I know of. I mean, you go to Spain, you better speak Spanish. You go to France, you better speak French. Italy as well, and Portugal, I guess because our movies are not dubbed and we have such a great decision. Whoever did that decision on RTP or whatever, our national TV, should get an award for it because people speak English here. So, and in Cascais growing up, there's a huge expat community. There's a strong connection to the UK. So I went to an English school for the first 2 years, St. Julian's. And then my father took us out of that and put me and my siblings into Salesianos. You know, I remember, they call it bullying now, but you know, I just got my ass kicked every day for not speaking the language. So I learned pretty fast how to speak Portuguese. But Portuguese people in general, some of those friends I still keep today, are very, very kind, loving, welcoming people. Yes, I am. I would say that a lot of people ask me how I'm always in a good mood. I guess temperament is a muscle, like anything else. And I have tough days, I have difficult times, I've had hardship in my life like everybody else, and I am sad like everybody else, but I have a public job and my patients and my team, because without my team I can't really do anything, it's all about confidence. So the more confident I am, and the more trust levels my team and my patients can have in me. So it's just good business to be positive, it's good business to be, have good energy. And it's something that you work at. It literally is a muscle that you work at. And it's one of the, I guess the secrets is, and there's so many songs that sing about this, and there's so many poems that sing about this, smile even if your heart is crying, there's a lot of songs like that. And there's a lot of wisdom in that, because no matter what you've got going on in your private life, you got to leave that out, come in, and you've got a job to do. And my job is all about trust, confidence, and I guess when you're happy and motivated, everybody around you feels the same. I had a lot of fun at university. It was a private university in Costa de Caparica, and it was a relatively new private university. I started when I was 18. I got in 1992. I used to go to work on my motorbike. I was a good student. I guess I have a photographic memory. So if I see something, I've never spoken about this on camera, but I'm mildly dyslexic. So if you know anything about dyslexia, the way that you read is you take a photograph and you recognize the image of the word. So it's not actually just adding the words together to make the word. If you take a photograph of the word, it translates into the word you're looking for. Back in the 70s, I was born in 73, that wasn't a thing. So I learned to read very graphically. And when you study medicine, there's a lot of images. So I guess I had that secret weapon. I just had really good grades. I remember it was easy for me in a sense. And I was always asking questions. So basically my dad had told me, he said, if I ever get a negative grade at school, he wouldn't pay for my university anymore. So I was profoundly petrified of failure and letting my dad down. So I wanted to get my money's worth, so I was always asking questions, to the extent that people would get very annoyed when the class would finish because I was always asking questions. And I always remember saying, I want to understand this. So I was very, very adamant about getting the best out of my education. And I have very good memories from those 6 years. I'm curious. I think if you expect the world or anybody to give you the answers you need, if you're just happy with that, fine. I want more, The more I know about something and talking to people, it's one of the keys to getting ahead, It's why? And it's such an easy question, but why, And if you think of it, a kid at the age of 2 to the age of 4, that's the number one question, why? And we seem to forget how to ask why. There's one university in Australia, and they have a fully digital program from beginning to end. So the dentists that graduate from that university truly are prepared for this digital revolution that we've lived in. There's a lot of universities, by my accounts, over 800 universities in the world, and only a fraction of them teach these young students anything remotely relative to digital dentistry. So let me explain digital dentistry. It's all about access. It's all about cloud. It's about sharing on the cloud. It's about using scanners and 3D printers and special technology that allows you to practically get your patient's mouth and head onto a computer, and then you can do anything with that. You can do treatment planning, you can design a new smile, you can execute treatments, 3D printers and milling machines. It's awesome. And one of the ultimate reasons why this is important is that there's no longer a dentist by himself in a room with a patient. You have that interface now, which is the cloud. And with this technology, you have access to information, to education. And moreover, you actually can mitigate failure by sharing your doubts online. People are a lot more comfortable with asking online, how do I do this? Than asking their boss, how do I do this? Because they're scared that their boss might give them not give them a raise or something. So fear of failure is something that is a huge deterrent, let's say, to growth. But at the same time, can also be its greatest weapon when well applied. And I think that this technology could really help students get past the boundary that they're not by themselves anymore and that they're not alone. Because I remember when I graduated, how lonely I felt. I felt lonely. I felt scared. I say scared, and I'd sailed across the oceans on a boat with my parents. It takes a lot to scare me. And I remember being profoundly scared of interacting with a human being and messing with their teeth with such little experience. And I think that it's profoundly important that universities spend a little bit more time with digital, explaining to them the concept of sharing, and also teaching humanity, teaching them how to interact with human beings. It shouldn't just be about grades. It should be about how you can speak to people. And I always tell my students at my lectures, they say, what's the secret to success? What should I study at school to become like you? And I said, acting. Like, what? I said, those of you that will communicate your ideas better than others will succeed more. Because at the end of the day, anybody that sits in one of these chairs is petrified. And our job is to communicate trust. And digital technology allows them to see more and understand more, turning your patient into a partner, not into a client. And that's something that I think is fundamental, and it's slowly starting, but it's still very expensive and there's a long way to go. And I hope to spend the next part of my career focusing on that. I graduated one of the top of my year back in 1998. When I graduated, nobody would give me a job. That was the first major lesson. It's all about, family helping and friends helping and stuff. So I had this hard reality where I had to go get a job in the south of Portugal. At the time, there was no highway, so it would take about 4 hours to get to where I wanted to work. I had to leave my family and friends. And I spent 2 years working in this international clinic in the Algarve, treating a lot of international patients. And that was a second teaching that I had that was vital to my education. And South African and a German dentist, they really helped me a lot. Every time I'd come back to Lisbon, there was this dentist in Lapa, which is a very well-known area of Lisbon. And he had this clinic that was dying down. He'd opened it in the 70s and he hadn't redone it. And I remember always saying, let me come and work for you. I'll do whatever it takes. I'll clean the floor. I'll wash your car. I'll do whatever. And he one day called me about 8 months shy of the millennium. And he said, look, do you want to buy my practice? And I had no money, nothing. I said, yeah. And my older brother was very kind to help me with the bank loan. And he said 2 words to me: don't fail. And I love my brother. He was my hero. He is my hero still today. And I guess the fact that there wasn't social media back then, I had no notion of my limitations. And I think that's one of the internet is great because it shows you possibility, but it also is a mirror. And if you're insecure, it can really show you your limitations. And a lot of people then won't even begin, scared they might fail. So I think that what's to happen in school, what should happen is it's okay to fail. Rule number 1, fail, 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 fail 10 times before you succeed. And I didn't know that. So I guess a bit of hubris, a bit of total lack of understanding of what I was getting involved in. I have a huge sense of ethics, a good moral compass. My dad taught me that, just always do right by people. And I always followed the textbooks. And I always say this to students of dentistry. Dentistry is science. And there's a lot of evidence that says, if you do this, this will happen. If you do this, that will happen. Don't do this because this will happen. There's so much evidence. It's almost like a Bible. It's very difficult to do it properly. But if you do it properly, you will have these results. I took the long road, the path less traveled, that took more time, invested more hours, and just stuck with the science. And at the end of the day, it set me free. It was the key to success, was just literally not bending the rules. That was a roller coaster mixed with the perfect storm. Only until recently do I actually speak about it. Where I live in the Southern Europe, failure in business is seen as mental illness. It's like there's this thing that you can't fail. You become toxic. I was doing TV shows back in 2005, 2006, primetime television shows in Portugal. When I was in university, I did TV commercials. Doing a TV show to promote what I was doing in dentistry when the Portuguese population thought that dentistry was about pulling out a tooth and, putting in fillings. I wanted to show that dentistry was about smiles. So anyway, I wrote this TV show and I became the executive producer of a show called Doutor Preciso de Ajuda on TVI, that all of a sudden, Saturday night prime time is in the homes of 5, 6, 7 million people, easy. And in those years, my clinic just went, it exploded. It was this huge unfair advantage in the marketplace. And we had clients flying in from all over the world, and we were prepared. I had a great team, and we were making a lot of money. And I was young, I was a kid, I was 35 years old with absolutely no playbook, never been done before. There was no benchmarking. And I was working out of a small clinic in Lapa, and that had grown, and we had the first floor and across the street, and it was a bit of a mess, and I wanted something, majestic. So the market retracted, there's a lot of competing clinics, the subprime hits, and I found out that my accountant had been embezzling funds because I didn't know how to run a business. I was a dentist, and I was a really nice guy and basically gave him blank checks to pay for my tax. And in a nutshell, he got a 5-year jail sentence. And that's very, very unheard of in this country for an accountant to get a 5-year jail sentence. And so we had that, and it took about a year to go to court. Suspended sentence, of course. And with all of that going on, it was just crazy. It was a year I was doing a lot of international lectures as well. And it took a toll, a big toll. And at the time, just everybody on my team, the advisory board, was said, let's just fold. So the moral of the story is a complete masterclass that would take, a lot of hours to explain. From a human level, it was tough, but what a great lesson. And it reconnected me with so many things. Sometimes I like to say it's as if God came down and slapped me on the face to redirect me in the right direction. So I much prefer the person I am today. My focus is different. My values have changed. I can safely say I'm not focused on money, I'm focused on happiness. Like truly as a business, the whole adventure of the last 8, 9 years has been incredible. And to sum that off, I could only focus on one thing in the past 8 years or 9 years, and that's reputation. Just do the right thing, be good to people. And that Facebook quote, be nice to everybody on your way up, because you're gonna need them on your way down. I don't think it's over yet, by far. I lost my father in the meantime, and I became a husband, and I became a father myself. And my wife always jokingly says, it's only teeth, it's only business. It's not what you take to the grave. And I just want that the story of my life has to be so much better than that. I remember this point in my life where, and I'm not somebody to ask for help. I'm the kind of guy, if I fall off my motorbike and break my arm, I will go by myself to the hospital and I won't bother anybody. It's just my education. I'm not a crybaby, and no more than my older brother, who's been a shining light in my life and still is. And he said to me, he says, look, you're at base camp. You've attempted Everest. Nobody's going to blame you for not trying. And it's already extraordinary you've come this far. So let's grab your things, go down the mountain, and let's, just live a normal life. You can get a great job at any clinic in the country. Anybody will hire you. You've got a good selection of clients. And dude, you're a good guy. Or you can go back up again. And it's going to be the hardest thing you've ever done. You've got time on your side. What do you want to do? And I think everybody in this life has to have a mentor. I had an overwhelming set of adversities. I was robbed, and I kept quiet about it. You know, we were trying to clean the whole thing, and then some dentist in the country that was jealous of whatever posted that on Facebook, and it became public, and then all of a sudden the house of cards fell down. Very much like Icarus, you know, I'd flown too close to the sun, and some people just want to buy popcorn and watch him fall into the ocean. And it was an extraordinary feeling. And I just remember, man, this is not me. I was taught to fall off a horse and get back on. That was just my thing. And again, like I said early on in the interview, there's a playbook for success in dentistry. It's called scientific investigation, the evidence-based treatment plan. And if you do it, you'll be right. And if you're a good person and you have the right moral values, God damn it, I mean, the foundation of our culture, of our civilization can't be wrong. If you do the right thing by people, you are rewarded. That's the way that I was taught. I hadn't done anything wrong. And at that moment, you realize very quickly who your friends are. Would I go through it again? Yes, I would, because it's just so much more fun to have that scar, you know, that wound, and say, look, I'm tougher because of it. Anything that comes into your brain can be a reality. Done it in my life. So I've sat on my sofa and I've had an idea, and then sometimes hundreds of people have got involved, and it becomes a reality. And I'm just absolutely not scared of anything I envision. The National Geographic was without a doubt a highlight of my career, in the sense that it combined my passion for storytelling, bringing the younger generation into the narrative, and showing how technology can drive change in third world countries. Maybe the trauma that I've been through in my life, I've stopped thinking of myself as a citizen, and I think of myself as a species. I'm hoping that I can gain a bit more traction. I created this hashtag, which will be coming out soon. It's going to be called Zero Waste Dentistry. I'm going to get some of the world's leading dentists, because we have that microcosmos, to inspire companies to focus on lowering the quantity of plastic in their packaging, because we don't need it. We just literally throw it away. So as long as it's sterilized and it's clean, we are going to prefer companies that have this zero waste policy. And for example, the suction little plastic thing, I was using one the other day, and they're disposable. There's 2 million dentists. If they're doing 6 patients a day, we did the math, it's 25 tons of non-biodegradable plastic in the oceans a year. I guess that one of my next challenges is twofold. One is inspiring my industry to have a zero waste policy to lower carbon emissions. And on the other hand, I have this vision for the future, creating a network using artificial intelligence to be responsible for diagnostics and treatment planning, and not humans. So let me just explain that very quickly. We today have technology called a CBCT, which is like a CT scan. They're quite expensive, but like, for example, I've had one in the clinic for 11 years now, digital technology. And then you have an intraoral scanner and facial scanning. And if you fuse those three together, you can share that on the cloud, and artificial intelligence can grab that and do your entire treatment plan based on metadata-driven science. So now you're not getting commercial treatment plan, because you never know where the boundaries of ethics go with certain professionals, and depending where you are. And I think that a human has the right to have an impartial, non-biased, not financially driven, not selected because of your insurance or your government, but a scientifically driven treatment plan. And then you can or cannot afford it. I'm not going to get involved in that, but you have the right to know what's wrong with your mouth and what's the ideal path to get it right. As a human, you have that right. And I think artificial intelligence is really going to filter that and improve that. And at the end of the day, when you finish your treatment with Dr. A, B, or Z, you go back to the scanning center, repeat the scan, and they can fuse that and actually rate your dentist on the quality of your treatment. So much like Uber, that you know more about your Uber driver than you do about your dentist, I think it's time to eliminate bad dentistry. So my fight, my big fight, I'm only 46, I got a lot of fight left in me, is going to be to eliminate bad dentistry from the face of the earth.